Today we're going to do just a simple tailing bonefish fly, a little bead chain light shrimp fly. Starting with a number 6 SL11 3H. It's similar to number 4 and most other size hooks. And I'm going to start with tan thread. Today I'm using, I think they actually call this cream thread. It's the flat wax nylon from Sightcast. And we're going to start by laying our thread base down. And we're going to go about a third of the way into the bend. And then bring it back. Towards the eye of the hook. So we're not going to tie all the way up to the eye of the hook. We're going to tie our bead chain in, and we're going to give ourselves a little spacing here in between the eye, so we have space to tie that last wing on the top of the fly. We're going to do our standard X wraps here on these bead chain. Do some loops around the whole thing, pull it tight. And then we're going to run our thread back here to not quite to the end, and we're probably 2 millimeters from the end of our thread wraps here. We're going to give ourselves a little bit of space to tie in the horn of the shrimp. So I'm using red fox tail for this. You could use a bunch of different things. You could even use craft fur if you want. Arctic fox is another really great one, Arctic fox tail. And the key for this is you really want to go sparse. And a lot of people want to do thick sections for this. You really want to go sparse with these. So I'm going to grab a really sparse clump of this and chop it off. And make sure there's no fluff down there at the bottom. And I'm going to measure this out here. We're probably going to do it about that long. And pinch it in and work your thread up to where you stopped those thread wraps and run it back. We're going to chop this tag end here, pull it up at an angle, and then scissors flat to the shank. Make a nice little ramp for your thread to cover up so you don't have a dramatic bump. So now we're going to do the beard of the shrimp. I call it the beard. I guess it'd be like the egg sac on a spawning shrimp. I'm going to do the Senyo's Laser Dub Hot Orange. I'm just going to grab a little chunk of this dubbing out and rip stack it. So it's all, the fibers are all nice and lined up. And then we're going to fold it in half and match the tips up. You see, I've got this kind of like long, fluffy bit here. I don't really need this to be that long or tapered, so I'm going to pinch it and I'm going to tear it right there. Line that up on the bottom of that horn that I tied in and tie that in right along the bottom. If you got any extra fluff here, you can just tear it off, or you can snip it with a pair of scissors. So now we're going to do the shrimp eyes. So I'm flipping the hook back over with the hook point on the top. And I'm going to grab a set of the easy shrimp eyes. You can tie in the individual shrimp eyes if you want. I know that they can be a little bit cheaper, but honestly, they're a bit of a hassle. These easy shrimp eyes make things so easy, surprisingly. It's not even worth spending the extra time on other eyes for me personally. I'm using these flat crimping pliers, and I'm flattening the back portion of this so it'll wrap around the hook as I tie it in. So I'm not trying to tie something flat onto something round. When I thin this out a bit, it's going to wrap around the shank and it'll sit a lot nicer and it'll create less bulk on the shank. So I'm going to take that V in the eyes and I'm going to put it right along the top of the shank here, and I'm going to slide it up till it's all the way up and lines up here with the base of my thread wraps. Switch it over here to my left hand, and we're going to pinch it in and tie it down tight, make sure it's nice and even for this bottom section here. And then slowly work your thread wraps up. Making sure that that set of eyes is nice and even along the top of your shank so you don't have a crooked set of eyes on your shrimp. Tie that down. Now we're going to do the antenna. So I've got black crystal flash that I'm going to use for the antenna, and we're just going to take a section of this out, a little piece, and chop it off. Now you can see I left this little tag end up from my easy shrimp eyes. You don't have to do it. It's just a really easy way for me to index materials and get things tied on easier and faster. So I'm going to take the crystal flash, put it on top of the shank, and tuck it underneath that tab. I'm going to line the ends of it up here and then bring it straight down along and tie the first couple wraps in. And now I want these to sit more on top and underneath these eyes. So I'm going to take each one of these pieces of strands of crystal flash, I'm going to tuck them up under the eyes and then pinch it down to the side of my vise here, just like that. And then I'm going to take the same on the other side and bring it up and pinch it down on the side of my vise there. So you can see it runs up along the top. So now as I'm tying this in, it's going to tie them in higher. They sit nicely right up underneath those eyes where I want them. Work my thread back. Now we're going to rinse and repeat with our legs. There's no real right answer for leg colors. Pick whatever your heart desires, whatever sounds right to you at the time. I got 2 different colors here. Same thing. I'm going to just wrap them in half over and underneath that tab. And line the ends up and tie those in. Now, I don't want these to sit as high as the antenna because I don't want them to get tangled up on the antenna. So I'm going to pinch them down further so that they run along the side to bottom portion of the shank. I want one pair on each side of the body though. If they're both on the bottom, they're all going to clump together and they're not going to get a whole lot of movement. I want a little bit of flair. So I want them to be on the sides of the shank. And early on, you can kind of pinch these things around and move them as you need to. But I'm going to start with a little bit more of a looser spiral wrap here to get them up in place where I want them. See, these are kind of creeping a little bit lower than I want them to. So I'm going to just kind of tug them over to the side a bit more. And then bring it all the way up to where your thread wraps end. Now, kind of take them, spread them apart a little bit so that they're on the sides of the shank there and you get them how you want them. Now, a little bit tighter wraps, going back, locking that all into place, and then I lock down that tab. And you can see that tab just goes right over everything and creates a really nice smooth ramp, cleans it up if you don't have any bumps from the end of your material, and it also helped index and line everything up for us. So now I'm going to work my thread back up here again, the same place we've been stopping for all of our thread wraps. We're going to do a dubbing loop here. And work our thread back to the eyes. I'm going to use my bobbin rest here. And hook up, you can use any dubbing word you want. For this, I'm just hooking up a dubbing word to this. So now for the body, I want to give it a little bit of a holographic-ish effect. I want it to be like semi-translucent, have a little bit of flash in there without being too crazy. So I'm going to use the UV Dub Ice Dub Tan. I'm going to take a pinch of this stuff, and it's going to be like the laser dub. Just do some rip stacking to make sure that we get all the fibers nice and lined up. And it's a little too long, so I'm going to cut it in half. I'm just going to chop it right down the middle there. And I'm going to start pulling clumps off of it and then tucking them into my dubbing loop here. And when I run out of that section, grab the other half that I trimmed here. So I got everything all nice and lined up. I'm going to pinch my material back here and start spinning my thread and pull back and let that transition up into my material. A couple more spins here. And we're going to use a brush to go ahead and start picking out all this material that was trapped in that spinning. So I'll start brushing one direction and then I'll go the other way until I get it all mostly fluffed out here. So now we're going to do one complete wrap around the front so that we have full coverage all the way around the front. And then we're going to start doing loose spiraling wraps, brushing our material forward as we go. We don't want to do tight touching wraps because it's just going to end up being too bulky. You want this to be pretty sparse. And bring it all the way back here to our bead chain. I'm just going to brush this out here really quick just so I don't have any trapped fibers before I lock that ends there. So I'm going to take my bobbin and we're going to just lock that dubbing loop in place and chop it off. All right, go through a little bit more aggressively now with my brush just to make sure that all of these fibers are nicely separated. None of them got trapped during that polymering process. And the last section is to tie the horn onto the end, or this little top wing, I guess, that connects to the horn. So we're going to take our foxtail again and do another nice sparse clump. I'll line it up here, see about how long we want it. That's probably good there. So I pinched, I'm keeping it at the same length. I'm transitioning to my left hand to pinch and see where we're ending here, because I'm going to need to pre-trim this to make it nice and flat. And so I know that I'm going to want to trim it right here. So I'm going to take that and then I'm just going to try and get a really nice clean trim here. We don't want any fibers pushing out past that. And I'm going to start with the material pushed in front of the eye of the hook here. And we're going to do 2 nice loose wraps there, resituate that clump on top. And now I'm going to pull the wing back until these tag ends are no longer obscuring the eye of the hook. Right there. And then I'm going to start doing tight wraps to lock that down and cover up those tag ends. Now we can go ahead and whip finish. Trim off our thread. You can finish your thread wraps with whatever you want. I'm using the ultra thin, bone dry, brush on UV resin from Solarez. Hit it with your UV light. Take that little wing that you put on there, split it over the hook of the shank and push it down. Just brush it all forward. Now our legs are a little on the long side, so I'm just gonna take my legs. I have a magnet on my vise I usually stick it to, so third hand. I can go ahead and trim my legs to length, and then I'm going to trim my antenna even. I usually leave the antenna a little bit longer. And that's it. There's our little tailing bonefish shrimp fly.